Good morning for those who are just joining us. We're just trying to work out some kinks. We'll be getting started very shortly. Alrighty, well, good morning and thank you for joining us today to the Modified Government Contracting in a Day, Module 1, Creating a Foundation for Success. So there are 9 modules with a 10th optional module, and they all build upon each other. And although we've scheduled an hour and a half for each one of the modules, some of the modules may be shorter than others. I just want to make sure that we had enough time to ask questions and get through this information so that you can start really pursuing government contracts and winning those contracts. So we're going to get started here. Good morning and welcome to Module 1 of Government Contracting in a Day, Creating a Foundation for Success. I don't know if you can see my camera or my video, but we are live from my backyard. It's easier to lock everybody into the house while I lock myself out of the cold patio than locking everybody else outside. And so I have kids and I have furry kids and they go a little crazy sometimes. So I'm gonna apologize up front. I have threatened them to stay quiet, but again, this is real life that we're living in. And so I apologize up front if we get disrupted at all with my craziness that's at my home. So let's get started. Why isn't my thing working? Oh, here we go. So a couple of housekeeping. If you wouldn't mind, please muting your phones and your audio. That way, the only background noise that we're getting is my chaotic household. But if you could mute your phones and audios if you're not already haven't already done so, that would be greatly appreciated. If you do have a question, I'm asking that you use the chat feature to ask your question if it's possible. I know that some of us are more savvy than others, and so if that's not possible, feel free to unmute and ask your questions. I want to make sure that all your questions are answered in this module. So after each slide, after each content, I'll be looking at the chat feature to kind of see what questions have been asked. I'll reiterate those questions. And please, please, please be patient with us as we roll out this new platform. This is all really new to us, and so we're doing the best we can. We want to make sure we get you this information, but we're not professional Zoom users or videographers, and so we do ask that you be patient with us. We're hoping to iron out these wrinkles as we do more of these. This webinar is being recorded. I'm hoping to be able to provide the recording to all of the attendees and then possibly utilize it in the future for those that may need a refresher. You hopefully have received the presentation already with the handouts. If not, we will be sure to provide those once we have updated the registered attendee list. So again, thank you for being with us here in your jammies, or if you did what I did and dressed from the top up, so you could just be here. I really appreciate it. So this presentation, this training is being brought to you by the North San Diego Small Business Development Center. We are funded by the Small Business Administration and hosted by MiraCosta College. My name is Cheryl Brown, and I am a procurement specialist. I've been working with government contracting officially since 2007, but in all honesty, I got started in government contracting in about 2003, 2004 as a hobby. I don't know who does that. I do, obviously, so it's a little bit weird. And my approach to training and government contracting is practical application. It's coming from the perspective of a small business owner and not some theory-based academia. I'm not knocking academia. Please don't think that I am. I'm just saying that we live in real life. This is not something we're going to do every single day. It's not something that we're supposed to be experts on. I mean, this is the real life. So I've made the mistakes. I've missed deadlines. I've incorrectly registered. And so my approach comes from, okay, how do we pursue government contracts as a small business with minimal resources? And that's the approach that this training takes. Let me see, we've got some chats here. Yes, you will be getting, Lucian, I got a couple questions. Will you be getting a recording? Yes, you will. And thank you for the encouragement. If you're unable to use the poll feature, I do apologize. Don't worry about it. Just X out of it. At least if we can capture your attendance, that's what's really important, so that we can continue working with our funding sources. So since 2007, I have been working with the Small Business Development Center in the area of government contracting, federal, state, local, as well as multi-state. And I've worked with about 2,500 small businesses in that arena, resulting in over $600 million in contracts to those small businesses. That is the reality of what we're here for. It's not to get you on every single registration. It's not to get you certified in every way you could be certified. Everything has to lead to getting a government contract. And so my approach is a little bit different. It's focused in actual contracts award, as opposed to getting you on all these different registries and all these portals. It's important that you realize many of you are probably parties of one, or if you're not in the doghouse, you're a dinner for two. If you count the kids, you're a family feast for five. And so I like to call these people itty bitty businesses. Most of us are in that boat. And out of the 2,500 small businesses I've worked with, I'm going to say about 98% of them are what we call itty bitty businesses. And I think that's important for you to realize, because you look at these government contracts and you're like, oh my gosh, they're so big. I'm only one person. I can't do this. This is out of my scope. Please, 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 please do not think that. You can do this regardless. If you are a party of one, dinner for two, family feast for five, you can do this. And I am here, we're here to help and support you in that adventure. So just for example, I have a client who started with me about 4 or 5 years ago, construction firm. And at the time they only had, it was him and his wife and his 3 sons, and they were all older. And so they started a construction firm and decided that they were going to pursue government contracts. Now they have over 80 employees and was just awarded last week a $35 million contract. And so that's the reality. We're not talking about business owners buying a whole new, buying a yacht or buying a new vacation home. And we're talking about real life small businesses looking for a way to provide some kind of stability for their families. Government contracting can do that. And I'm here to do whatever I can to make it as easy as possible for you to navigate these systems. And so in addition to government contracting that we provide advising, and we also provide advising in almost every area that you could possibly need as a small business to help you be successful, whether it be strategic planning, business planning, access to capital, marketing, technology commercialization. And recently, obviously, with everything that's going on with COVID-19, there are a number of programs that are coming out that can help you and support you, whether you're a business owner or maybe you're a displaced employee or you've had your hours reduced. Either way, there are federal, state, and even local resources that are being rolled out on a daily basis. So if you're finding yourself in a predicament, more than we are right now, but if you're struggling financially because of COVID-19, please let us know. We have resources and advisors that will help you navigate and find the options that are available to you. And I do want to say, please, please be healthy, be safe, be sane, and stay home. Most importantly, stay home if you can. So welcome. Again, my name is Cheryl Brown. I'm with the North San Diego Small Business Development Center. I'm a procurement expert, and you are attending the Module 1 of Government Contracting in a Day training, Creating a Foundation for Success. So what does that look like? I don't know why my screen's not going. So what is government contracting? You know, a lot of times we get a lot of information that's really complex and it's overwhelming, and that's part of the problem or part of the obstacle of government contracting is people find that it's just way overwhelming. I'm here to tell you, let's keep it simple. Government contracting can actually be the easiest thing you do. And I know some of you might be chuckling, but it can be. And that's what we're here to do, is to help you navigate those systems as easy as possible. So to keep it really simple, a government contract is any purchase made with your tax dollars. That's it. And so when you think about the types of taxes you pay, you only pay 3 types of taxes: federal, state, and then local. And I know it always seems like it's a lot, but those are the only types of taxes you pay. And so if a project is being paid for, if a service is being paid for by your federal tax dollars, then they have to follow some rules. And that's the thing with all the government contracts here. It is mandated by law. There's actually laws in place that dictate how a government agency procures your goods and services, and those are laws. And there's, for those of you who might not know, there are federal laws, there are state laws, and then there are local laws. And sometimes those laws don't mirror each other. So for example, the federal minimum wage is like $7.50 an hour, something along those lines. But here in the state of California, it's like $12 or $13 an hour. And in some cities, it's even higher. So when you have a law that contradicts itself, you know, the question is, well, which one would you follow? Well, the rule of thumb is you would follow the most restrictive. But how would you know that? Especially with government contracting, you may have no idea which one is most restrictive. So if a contract is being paid for solely by your federal tax dollars, you're going to be following the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation. Please, please, please don't stress over this. Do not, after this training, go and Google the FAR or try to print the FAR or try to read the FAR, not unless you have insomnia, and it'll surely put you to sleep. But it's a large document, and it's a lot of legal mumbo jumbo, basically. And so there are sections that you're going to want to be aware of, but at this point, don't overwhelm yourself with it. Don't try to figure it out. And just know that if it's a federal contract, it's going to be regulated by the Federal Acquisition Regulation. Then you have the state contracts. So if a product or service is being procured by your state tax dollars, then it's going to follow the state contractor's manual, which then comes down or is derived from the CFR, Code of Federal Regulations. I know it's a lot of acronyms. The government loves their acronyms. Try just to absorb what you can. One of the reasons why we're here is to help you kind of navigate these systems, but I want to at least provide you with a basic foundation of what a government contract is. And then you have local projects. So if a contract or a product or service is being procured by your local tax dollars, then it's going to follow the those local guidelines. It gets a little tricky when you have a project that receives multiple types of funding. So for example, Caltrans receives both state, federal, and local funds. And so for an agency like Caltrans, they may have a project that's being paid for by multiple funding sources. And if those laws contradict each other, which ones would you follow? Well, you wouldn't know. Remember, I'm going to try and make this nice and easy for you. You're going to follow whatever they tell you to. Simple as that. Don't try to figure it out. You know, unless of course you're planning on becoming a contract specialist like myself. That's something that you don't need to overly concern yourself with. Each opportunity, each contract, each agency will be able to tell you what sets of guidelines you have to follow. And I can also tell you as well. So if you have a solicitation and you get an opportunity and you're not quite sure what you need to be following, let me know or reach out to the agency. They can be able to tell you as well. And I know that we are going to be getting some questions as we go through. After each slide, I will check the chat feature to see what questions are being asked, and I'll be sure to address those questions as they come in after each slide. So the funding source is going to dictate the rules that the buyer has to follow. And so the buyer is not trying to be mean. I know it sounds like, you know, there's a lot going on and they're like, there's all these rules and all these guidelines and it's not fair. You know what? It's not the buyer's fault. They're just following the rules and the legislation. And so the funding source is going to dictate those rules, and then the buyer has to follow those rules. Now, there are some private sector companies or entities that also will follow some of the same guidelines. And those guidelines, for example, any agency that is regulated by the government, so think about public utilities, SDG&E, Verizon, AT&T, water districts, any entity that is regulated by the government will also have to follow some of the same guidelines set forth by the funding source. So for example, public utilities are regulated by the state of California. And so those entities also have to follow some of the same requirements and same guidelines. Any entity that's subsidized, so think about hospitals, think about institutions of higher learning, even grocery stores. They are subsidized by your tax dollars, so they will also have some of the same guidelines or restrictions and rules that they may have to follow. Also, any company that has a supplier diversity program. So think about the big guys, Walmart, Costco, HP, Dell. They all have supplier diversity programs. So they're also going to have not necessarily the same guidelines, but also have some of the same programs implemented that they would need to follow. And then government prime contractors. They have to follow whatever their customer tells them to follow. So Sun Construction, for example, has several different projects. Some are with the federal government, some are with the state government. And so whatever their customer is requiring of them, they have to require of their subcontractors. So it kind of goes back to, it's not anybody's rules in particular. I mean, these people aren't trying to make it difficult for you. It's just they're having to follow whatever guidelines and legislation they're being required to follow. Alrighty, so I'm gonna take a look at this chat feature. Any questions thus far? You can either use the chat feature, or if you wanna unmute yourself, you can ask those questions now on this first segment of what is government contracting. It gives me a chance to grab a little coffee. Okay, well, we will move on then. So this is the stuff that nobody wants to think about, and this isn't really kind of not the fun stuff, but this is also probably the most important to your success, the things that you need to think about as you venture into pursuing government contracts. Because honestly, sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is that, as a small business especially, is that you actually bid on a project and win. Because now you got to do what you said you were going to do, and at the time you probably didn't even think that you had a chance to actually winning the contract, but now you have. And so now what are you going to do? And it's like an, oh shoot, that's when we hit the panic button. This module is designed to help you to create that foundation before that occurs. And it doesn't mean that you have to do all of this before you actually start looking at opportunities. You're going to be working on these simultaneously. So the number one reason small businesses fail to perform is cash flow. See, with the government, it's not like they pay you up front. They don't even pay you a portion up front. And please don't ask them to. They can't. Illegally, they cannot do that. And so when you win a contract and you start performing on a contract, you're going to have to float the cost of that contract from performance to payment. And even if you're a party of one and it's just you and you're doing maybe consulting work, so it's like, well, I don't really have much overhead. Know this, your mortgage is still going to be due. And so if you're performing on a project today and you're not going to get paid for 60 days out, how are you going to bridge that gap? I'm going to tell you right now, if there's one thing, one absolute I can give you is if you make the decision to move forward with government contracting, you are going to need some sort of funding, access to capital, even if it's just there as a safety net, because government contract payment terms are typically a net 45. That's in general. Some agencies are longer. I know of some agencies that are on a net 180. So a lot of the larger agencies, you can bank on more of like a net 90. And so for those of you who may not know what net terms means, it means the point from which you submit your invoice and you get paid. Now with the government, typically the invoicing process has an extra step. So not only do you invoice, but your invoice has to be approved. And at the point of approval, that's when those net days start accruing. And so you are going to need some sort of access to capital. There's a number of different things you need to consider when you're looking at funding. You know, your credit score, your tax returns for the last 3 years, your financial statements, your profit and loss statements, cash flow statements, balance sheets, all of that accounting kind of stuff. Now, for most small businesses, we're like, a lot of them, like, they're like, well, I don't even know what those are. And that's okay. If you don't know what those are, or if you don't have them, we've got some amazing advisors that can help you put those together. So as we go through these different modules, as we go through these different areas, please know that you're not alone and there's assistance. You know, if you're pulling your credit report and it's not looking so hot, before you start negotiating with those creditors, take a step back. We have advisors that can help you with that, because there's a lot of rules with regards to with your credit. And so you want to make sure that you don't, you know, shoot yourself in the foot, so to speak. So funding, that's going to be a key component, because that's going to determine the size of the project you can pursue. And because we do so much government contracting in our particular center, we have specific programs in place specifically for those that are seeking or looking to do business with the government. There's a particular program, I call it bridge funding, and my funding advisors get mad at me for calling it that, because that's not really what it is. I guess there's another kind of term for it, but the only way it resonates with me because it bridges the gap between performance and payment. And so what they do is they assess your situation. These funding institutions, they assess your situation and they say, okay, Susan, we're going to pre-approve you for up to $100,000. And when you're awarded a contract for $30,000, we'll release 30 of the $100,000 as a line of credit in case you need to tap into it. Perfect world, yeah. You'd have your own money, you'd be able to self-fund, but we all know it's not a perfect world, and cash flow is important. So you want to have that in place so that it's something that you can rely on if need be. The second part is bonding and insurance, and I'm not going to get into too much detail with the bonding. If you're a CSLB licensed contractor, so if you're in the construction trades, you're already familiar with bonding. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to need more than your $15,000 license bond. There are a bunch of different types of bonds. There's payment bonds, there's bid bonds, there's performance bonds, and there's surety bonds. There's all kinds of bonds. And a bond is basically, to keep it really simple, is a insurance policy for that particular project. And although most contracts or most opportunities are not going to require it unless you're in the construction trades, there are some agencies that are requiring it even for professional services. So most recently, the County of San Diego issued a request for proposal for janitorial services. And typically janitorial services would not require any kind of bonding. However, the county is actually asking for a bid bond in order to bid on this particular project. This usually happens because the agency got burned at some point. And so now they're implementing the requirement of a bond even for industries outside of the construction trades. So for those of you who are not in construction trades and you're looking at this going, oh my gosh, I need to find out what my bonding is, I wouldn't stress too much over this. This is going to help you determine whether or not the agency that you're looking to do business with is going to be viable for you. And so this would be one of those criterias. But for those of you who are in the construction trades, I'm going to tell you right now, if you're relying on your $15,000 bond, that's the max project you can submit for, which maybe that's all you're comfortable with it at this time, and that's perfectly fine. But I'm going to tell you, you're going to want to start looking at increasing your bonding. Let's see this question. We got a question here. Oh, no, okay. People just checking in. Thank you. Insurance. So general liability insurance is not a legal requirement for businesses, although it's highly recommended that you get it. Like a lot of other insurances, like earthquake and flood insurance, you don't really necessarily need it, but you're sure glad you have it if something happens. Well, general liability insurance is a requirement. It's a mandate if you want to do government contracting. Typically, you're going to be looking at anywhere between a $1 to $2 million general liability policy. You're also going to need to be able to add the agency as an additional insured, as well as have, I believe it's called an errors and omission clause, basically an indemnification of the agency. Now, some insurance companies will do this, some will not. So you'll want to investigate with your current insurance company whether or not they will provide insurance in this manner. So if you're in a situation where you don't currently have general liability insurance, you're at least going to want to find out what would it cost. So that way, when you're awarded a contract, you're making sure that you're including those costs in your pricing and costing. Again, I can't stress it enough. It's not a legal requirement unless you're doing business with the government, but general liability insurance is something we do highly recommend all small businesses secure. And shop it around. Not all insurance companies are created equally. I know that in this day where we're all bundling, your personal insurance providers may not be your best business insurance providers, and this goes with your banking institutions as well. For example, I have USAA for pretty much everything. Everything, my banking, my mortgage, my car payment, everything is through USAA, and I absolutely love them. But their business line is non-existent. And so be sure to shop it around. At the conclusion of this module, I'm going to be supplying you with a list of outside resources, and it includes insurance companies in case you don't have a starting point. Please note, these resources are in no way at all affiliated with me or our program. But because I get asked so many times by clients like, hey, Cheryl, do you have any insurance companies that you could recommend? No, I can't. No, I don't. I am not recommending, I'm not referring, nor am I endorsing. But because I get these questions so often, I have asked my clients that I've worked with over the years to refer to me their preferred insurance companies and bonding companies and things of that nature. So this is a list compiled of resources that have been referred to me by other small business clients just like yourself. And I'll be sure to provide those to you if you haven't already received them through the email that I sent this morning. But know that, yes, if you don't have general liability insurance, you're going to need to get it if you want to do business with the government. For those of you who do have general liability insurance, you want to make sure that the limits are agreeable. So again, in general, $1 to $2 million, ability to add an agency as an additional insured, as well as add an indemnification clause, because the agency is never at fault for anything, right? The next step is going to be staffing and supply plan. So the staffing plan, chances are when you're awarded the contract, you might need to hire some help, whether it be subcontracting, independent contract agreements, which by the way, in California, you got to be careful with because of the AB5 rule. But how are you going to hire these people? How are you going to process their payroll? Are you going to do this in-house? Do you have the bandwidth to do this in-house? Do you have the knowledge to do this in-house? And there's a lot of great programs that are pretty user-friendly that you can tap into. So QuickBooks, I know most of my clients that do their own payroll use QuickBooks, but maybe that's not something that you're comfortable doing. There's a number of resources out there that can help you. One such resource that a lot of my small business clients are utilizing is called employee leasing. And employee leasing is kind of like a temp agency, except you find the person, you interview the person, you hire the person, and then they become the employer of record. So they process their payroll based on the timesheet that you approve. They also manage the sick time and on all of the employer benefits and the employer burden. So they handle the FICA and the FUTA and all that good stuff. One of the nice things about employee leasing too is most employee leasing firms offer a basic benefits package for your employees. So basic medical, dental, and 401ks, and those employees can opt to add or to improve their benefit offerings, so at additional cost to them. So that's kind of an option for you. Another part of the staffing plan you really want to think about, how are you going to find these people? See, right now with skilled trades, it's really, really hard. And I'm telling you right now, you don't want to be hiring the guys at the Home Depot in the parking lot. And I'm not saying that they're not good at what they do. I'm not saying that their value is any less. But with government contracts, there are a little bit more requirements. You want to make sure that whoever you are hiring meets the needs of your contract. So for example, if you're going to be working with the school district, chances are all your employees are going to need to be background checked, fingerprinted, all that other good stuff. And so keep that in mind as you're looking at pursuing government contracts. How are you going to hire? Who are you going to hire? How are you going to process the payroll and manage the benefits if you need to? And that can be quite overwhelming. And so make sure you start thinking about that now. See the chat feature? I think someone's offering. Lori, through you, you're going to handle all that. So next is the supply plan, and it's just kind of like the staffing plan. Chances are you're going to need supplies. Where are you going to buy them? Who are you going to buy them from? How are you going to find them? I'm going to tell you right now, you want to be dealing with more than one vendor. Because if you're only dealing with one vendor, when you're awarded that contract and you go reach out to that vendor to buy 500 widgets, for some reason, your vendor just won the lotto and now they're in Bali enjoying bonbons by the pool. You want to make sure that you are utilizing multiple vendors and asking them to give you a quote. With your vendors also, I want you to start opening up some conversations with them and negotiating your terms. One of the things you want to ask for is the net payment terms. So if you're dealing with a vendor right now and maybe you're on a net 10, ask them for a net 90. Now, chances are they're probably not going to give you the net 90 right up front, but if they give you a net 30, that's better than a net 10. And if your vendor's not willing to negotiate with you for your payment terms, find another vendor. Simple as that. Because if you win a contract, the vendor's going to make money as well. And so it's like one hand washes the other. Also with your vendors, ask to negotiate your price, because let them know that you're pursuing government contracts, you're going to be leveraging your small business or your disabled veteran business or whatever you need to tell them. And ask them if they can offer you preferred payment or preferred rates for the government contracts, because that's going to help you in your price points to provide better pricing for your customer, which will then give you a more competitive advantage. Once again, Shop around, shop your vendors. Be very cautious though. If your vendor tells you, oh sure, yeah, we'll give you reduced rates, but we want you to guarantee that you're going to procure or you're going to purchase X amount of product. Do not agree to that, because you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, especially right now with the economy being what it is and COVID-19 and everything else. I mean, you can't make those guarantees. And so you want to make sure that you don't agree to something that might wind you in hot water later on. Let's see here, we got a chat. So we have hands-on labor can do it all. So that's Lori. So hands-on labor. That's not an endorsement. That's not a referral. That's not a recommendation. It's just one of our attendees offering their services. Thank you, Lori. And now finally, the sales cycle. So a sales cycle is the point from introduction to winning a contract or getting a check. And the sales cycle, and that's only if you're consistent and persistent in your marketing efforts to that particular agency or to that particular buyer. And so in general, the sales cycle for government contracts is about 6 to 12 months. That does vary based on the size of the agency, but in general, you can look at a 6 to 12 month sales cycle only if you're consistent and persistent in your marketing efforts. Some of those sales cycles can be a little shorter. So for example, some of your local municipalities, City of Carlsbad, City of Oceanside, City of Escondido, you're looking maybe at a more of a 30-day sales cycle. The state of California is another great example. Even though they're a large agency, they're super easy to work with. And so their sales cycle is usually about 30 to 90 days. Now, if you're looking at marketing to, say, the Defense Logistics Agency, which is a huge, huge federal agency, now you're looking at more of a 12 to 18 month sales cycle. And the reason why I bring this up is, especially in this time, if you're struggling, if you're looking at this as a way to save your home or put food on the table today, this is not where you need to be marketing. You want to be marketing more with the consumer market, with the commercial market, because that's going to have a shorter sales cycle. As they always say, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And so some of the things to think about as we start pursuing government contracts is, access to capital, bonding if needed, if it's industry specific, making sure you have the right insurance policies in place. How are you going to hire? How are you going to deal with your vendors and that sales cycle? Because again, sometimes the worst thing that can happen to a small business is they actually bid on a project and win. I'll give you an example. So I have a client who is a general contractor, and they specialize in maintenance, facility maintenance, and things of that nature. So they don't do any kind of new construction. They're basically all building facility maintenance services. And they were awarded a 3-year contract on Camp Pendleton for facilities maintenance department. The 3-year contract would have an optional 4th and 5th year if they performed well. So first year, they knocked it out of the park. He hired like 9 employees. It was pretty much full-time work for his 9 employees. He was growing the business. It was just wonderful. And for the first time in his entrepreneurial life, he had wiggle room. He had breathing room. Well, halfway through the 2nd year, his bookkeeper decided to get married and elope and move to Mexico. How dare she, right? Leaving him not necessarily in the lurches, but without a bookkeeper. And so when that's happened, he didn't hire someone, he didn't manage it right away, and it started getting a little out of control. And so what ended up happening is invoices stopped being processed. And when those invoices stopped being processed, payments stopped coming in. As those payments stopped coming in, and it's kind of like a snowball effect, the bank account started to dwindle and reduce and go down and go down. Well, one Friday afternoon when his employees went to go cash their checks, their paychecks, they all bounced. Worse than one of those Super Bowls. And when the employees didn't get paid on Friday, they didn't show up on Monday, which means the work didn't get done on the contract. So the agency slapped him with a non-performance. They basically fired him, non-performance, and he's done. Well, he doesn't come to me and tell me of this until like a year later it happens. And so he tells me the story, and then he's finally like, you know what, Cheryl, he's like, I've got everything under control now. I'm back on it. What do I need to do to get back onto Camp Pendleton? So I sat there for a minute trying to think about creative ways, and finally it came to me. So I looked at him and I said, enlist. Because unfortunately, a non-performance is a non-performance and you are done. Every time you fill out an application or a proposal, it's going to ask you, has your firm ever been claimed for non-performance or something along those lines? And the minute you click on yes, you have disqualified yourself, because the agency can't trust that you're going to be able to perform if you haven't been able to perform in the past. And so all of these things ensure that you have the infrastructure in place to support the contract. So I'm going to take a moment to pause here for anybody that might have any questions at this point. That gives me a chance again to have a little bit of coffee. Okay, so no question. Oh, we do have a question here. I should probably give people a chance to type it out. I'm not used to this delay. Let's see here. So some questions. All righty. So a question we have here is, can you explain the net 30 and net 90? Yes, yes. So net 30, net 90, net 180, these are payment terms. And so a payment term is the time between invoicing and actual payment. So whenever you hear the terms net 30, that means that you have 30 days to pay that bill. So it's kind of like your credit cards. You get your credit card statement on, March 3rd, and your payment isn't due till April 3rd. That's a net 30. With the government, there's an additional component, and it's net terms upon approved invoice. So if we look back at the credit card example, say your credit card, and obviously they don't do this, but this is kind of like how the government deals with this. So the credit card company sends you your credit card statement on March 3rd, and you have 10 days to approve the statement. Well, that's kind of like the government. You give the government your invoice on March 3rd, they have 10 days to approve it, and then those net terms start from the day of approval. So even though you may be on, maybe the government has a net 30 payment term, it may be more like net 45 if there's a component of upon approved invoice, which there typically is. So we've got a question here. Are there grants to apply for to help you with your startup business? That's a tricky question. No. There are grants available for firms that primarily are in innovative technologies or research and development. Now, with that being said, I do know that some of the veteran organizations do have grants. For example, I just learned about this a few months ago. I believe it's called the Semper Fi Foundation, but you have to be a veteran of the United States Marine Corps to qualify for that. But with regards to general grants, in general, no. Now, I've got an asterisk on that one as well, because right now, with the current programs that are out and COVID-19, there may be some grants, but I'm not aware of them for startup. All right, another question. When we say market to the buyers, how does one go about that exactly? And if this is covered in future modules, a general explanation is fine. So yes, Shay, there's actually a module that is specific to marketing to government buyers. And there's not much difference between marketing to the government buyers than marketing in the private sector, with the exception of no bribes, which means you can't give them charters tickets, or you can't give them a bottle of Gentleman Jack, which in the private sector, that's usually how things work, if you will. But in the government sector, you cannot do that. And so introducing yourself, identifying those buyers, learning what they need from you, very similar to what you would do in the private sector. However, that is covered in another module. We have a whole module solely designed for marketing. And so hopefully you'll be able to join us. Again, we will be recording these modules. Depending on how they come out, we will distribute them so that you can refresh on those. Especially, I know people are coming in and going out of the Zoom here because, you know, we try to manage our homes at the same time. So want to make sure we get this out to everybody. Okay. So one of the things that I like to do for my clients is do everything I can to help move them forward, help them to create action items. So hopefully you received the handout. If not, I will be sending this to you again as we recap on the module here. But things that you can start doing today to help move you forward and help you create the foundation for success. Your action items for Module 1 include: check your credit score. See what it looks like. Most credit card companies offer it for free, so you can check it through there. Be aware, whatever credit score you do utilize, notate the source of the credit score. So like there's Advantage and FICO and all these other different types, because there's a huge difference between the different types of credit scores. Typically, I go with FICO because that seems to be the most broadly utilized. If your credit score is not looking so hot, and when we say not looking so hot, I would say under maybe 660, give or take, you'll want to pull your credit report and get with one of our credit recovery advisors. Do not pay for a service you don't need to. And let's take a look to see whether or not there's some things that we can do to improve it. Here's the thing with credit scores, and I'm not a credit recovery expert by any means. My experience is based on my gazillion years of doing this. When you have, if you have collections on your account, on your credit score, in the state of California, and I know that there's some wiggle room here, but in the state of California, for the most part, collection agencies have only 4 years for them to legally collect on a debt. And typically what happens is after the 4 years, you might get these court notices, which are not really court notices because they haven't been filed with the court, but they look pretty official. And when people get these, they kind of panic and they call the creditor, the collection agency, and they're like, okay, well, you know, let's work out a payment plan of $10 a month. By doing that, you just reset the statute of limitations. And so if you're looking at your credit report and there are collections on there that are more than 4 years old, get some assistance from a credit recovery advisor so that you can possibly have them removed, because the creditor doesn't have any legal right to collect on them. Medical bills, although they do impact your credit score, they're not, a lot of creditors will overlook them, like your mortgage companies will overlook those types of things, especially in this environment of what we have going on. But check your credit score. We're going to need to know what that is, and I'm talking about your personal credit score. Our funding advisors are going to want to know that as well, because that's going to help them to determine which programs might be best for you. Another thing you're going to do, you're going to want to gather your financial records. So when you gather your financial records, we're talking about your tax returns, both personal and business if you have a separate entity, your income statement, Your balance sheet, again, if you're not quite sure what those are or how to develop them, let me know. We can get you with an advisor that can help you with that. Next, you're going to connect with your advisor, and that's going to be me. And I can help facilitate an appointment with the funding advisor, because you want to start having those conversations sooner rather than later. That way we have that infrastructure in place. And then item number 9, research bonding and insurance cost options. Again, if you don't currently have insurance or you're going to need to increase your insurance, you're going to want to find out what that's going to cost you. Bonding is the same thing. If you're going to need to increase your bonding, what is that going to cost you? See, the neat or the interesting thing about this is all the documents that you are pulling for funding, you're going to need for bonding as well. So it's like kind of double dipping there. One of the things I'm going to show you here, hopefully you got this. I sent it via this morning, but if not, we'll be resending it. So if we look at, this is going to be your action items. So number 6, check your credit score. Number 7, gather financials. Number 8, schedule appointment with funding. And I can help facilitate that for you. And then number 9, research, bonding, and insurance. So these are your action items for this module. Let me go back here. And so we've got a great question here from Chance. Chance, so the question is, what if your business is just starting and you have no real balance sheet? Then you don't. You'll still have to provide a balance sheet, even though it's 0000, but our funding advisor will be able to guide you much better for those of you who are maybe in a startup position. I want to take a moment here as well to address those of you who may be just getting started in your business. As a startup, you can still pursue government contracts. You're going to have a little bit of an obstacle in doing so because you don't necessarily have past performance, and past performance is defined as what your company has performed on, whether it be private or public sector. Now, we go into great detail about past performance when we cover the capability statement modules, but for those of you who might be just getting started, I don't want you to become discouraged. I don't want you to not pursue government contracts. Know that it's a little bit of a challenge, but that's what we're here to do, is we're here to help you overcome those challenges. And every business has challenges. Some of you may be in a situation where your challenge is you're just getting started. Some of you may be in a situation where your business is struggling because of the current conditions of the economy. Every single business has struggles, has obstacles, and our role as advisors are to help you kind of overcome those struggles and those obstacles. And so let me go next here. So those are your action items for module 1. So our next module, which is going to be today at 12 o'clock, is titled What to Expect. Not what to expect when you're expecting. It's what to expect. And what we're going to cover in that particular module is twofold. I'm going to take you through step-by-step process on how to pursue government contracts as a small business. I'm also going to address one of my favorite segments, or my favorite slides, is who are the players and how to play the game. For those of you on the East Coast, it's players. For those of you on the West Coast, players. But we're going to talk about who are the players and how do you as a small business play the game. Now, each module does build upon the previous module. And so those of you who have attended today will be receiving this link immediately after today's module. But if you're able to write it down, I'm going to send this to you as well via email, so hopefully you'll get that. But you can register, and I know we don't know any easier way to do this at this point. So if you register here, oops, sorry. You go to this website here. These modules are not open to the public, so you need to have the direct link in order to access it. But you'll want to register for module 2, which is occurring today at 12 o'clock, and what to expect with next steps. So let me go back here. Earlier I mentioned outside resources, so I will be sending this to you as well. These are the outside resources that I referred to. Again, I want to stress these outside resources are in no way affiliated with me or the SBDC network, but they have been referred to us by other small business clients that have used them. So let me go back here. And thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm going to open things up for questions that you may have regarding Module 1. I'm also going to take a look here. So here, if you receive the registration link, you're going to notice the follow-on modules. Module 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Module 2, which is going to be today at 12 o'clock, is going to cover what to expect. Module 3, which is a really, really good, fun module, is how to find your buyer. During that module 3 on how to find your buyer, I'm going to be demonstrating using real life and real live portals. Module 4, which is kind of a short module, is going to talk about how to determine the viability of the buyer. Module 5 is going to cover the capability statement. Module 6 is going to cover marketing. Module 7, which is a doozy, is all about the certifications. Small business, women-owned, minority-owned, 8A. Module 8 is going to be covering introduction to proposal writing. And then finally, Module 9 will cover the pre-certification packet and how to get help with government contracting. I've added an optional Module 10, which is going to cover all of the supporting documents needed to pursue or secure certifications. So I do see I have a chat here. Let's see. Alrighty. So here's a question. Have you heard if government construction may temporarily cease in Southern California with the coronavirus situation? I have not heard of that. In fact, I know that Balfour Beatty has an event, a webinar going on Monday regarding the projects they have with the San Diego Unified School District. So as far as I know at this point, the government is still buying, and in fact, buying a little quicker than maybe they normally do. But as of this time, I have not heard of the construction being halted or ceased. Obviously that could change in an hour, but at this point I have not been informed of that. And the next question, when will you send out the email for the second module? Right away. So immediately after this module, I'm going to be sending out the module or the link for the next module. I'm also going to be sending out the handouts as well. I might be able to do something here. Let me see. Let me see if I can do this. Ooh, I might be able to do something better. I might be able to send this in the chat feature. Let me see. I'm gonna try. Nope, I don't think I can do that. Oh, thank you, Danielle. You are awesome. Also, for you, Chance, if you did not receive my email from this morning, I sent an email with instructions as well as the presentation, outside resources, and the action item as an attachment. Be sure to check your spam folder, because I did send it this morning before today's event at I think about 9:30. Lucian has a question. Do you have links to the Prime's online events? Not yet. I know that the Primes are eagerly trying to put something together. Swinnerton is the first one to pull something right away, and I believe I sent it already. But if not, Lucian, go ahead and send me an email, and I'll make sure I send you that information and that link. Another question, is checking credit score and bonding necessary for digital services? Yes and no. The credit score, yes, because you are most likely going to need access to capital, and you want to at least know what your credit score is so that we know what programs you might be available. Bonding is not going to necessarily be needed for digital services, but that's also going to be contingent on the agency that you might be targeting. And so during one of the modules that we talk about viability, that's something that we address, is how do we determine whether or not that particular agency is viable for you. So for example, Shinobi, say you want to market to the state of California, and I'm not saying this is the case, and in your research, you find that the state of California is requiring digital services to carry a performance bond. Well, at that point, you can then determine, do you want to continue pursuing the state of California, or do you want to identify a different agency to pursue? Because there are, in San Diego County alone, there are over 2,000 agencies here in San Diego County alone. And so, a handful of them are at least going to be good matches for you, because not all business is good business, and we actually will discuss that when we talk about the viability modules. Another question. If I need to miss one module, will I still be able to attend the rest, and will I be able to see a recorded version of the module instead? So Angelica, we're struggling with that one. And so we are recording the modules. However, I am going to be replaying these modules to see the quality, to see if the information is being disseminated appropriately. And if so, we will be sending these recorded modules out. It's possible that I may opt to do these modules with recorded as opposed to live time, and then disseminate. But ultimately the goal is that we will have these recorded, whether I'm recording the live ones and disseminating those, or if I'm going to record them not live. But yeah, you'll be able to see a recorded version. Make sure you send us an email though. Again, we're having some difficulty trying to manage this process because it's all so very new. Because we're government funded too, in order for me to get credit or to get compensated for today's module, I need to be able to demonstrate that I actually taught the module. And that's why we have everybody sign in and sign up. And also you're going to be receiving a request for an evaluation. So we're trying to work around how do we, quote unquote, count these trainings for our funding sources, and then also how do we disseminate the information so that you have it. So if you miss a recording, if you miss a module, shoot us an email. I'll do whatever I can to get you the information that you need. A couple more questions here. Oh, you're so very welcome, Lori. Thank you. I'm glad that we're able to help you here and stay support. Know that we as advisors are working full time remotely. So we are fully accessible to you. This is across the entire network. So if there's anything that comes up, let us know. We'll get you to the right resource. See here. Yeah. So Glenda mentioned check your credit score through your bank. You certainly can do that as well. Just make sure you ask or find out what credit score they're using. Because again, there's all different kinds. So you want to make sure that you know which credit score you're using, and then our funding advisor can then determine whether or not the lending institution that's paired with you is going to accept that. Okay, what is your email address, please? So I'm going to give you our general email address. It's also on the handout, centerinfo@miracosta.edu. The reason why I am providing you with the general email and not my direct email is depending on what your inquiry is, it may not be, I may not be the best person for you. So our office coordinator. Her name is Amy, and I call her Triple A. She gets mad at me every time I do so, but I call her Triple A because she's always awesome, Amy. And she really, really helps me and helps us to manage our workload. I mean, as you can imagine, we're a little busy right now, but that doesn't mean we're too busy to support and help you. We just want to make sure that we're getting you to the right advisors and the right places to really help you. And so you are, Angelica, you're very, very welcome. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. I really appreciate it. I hope that, this helps you kind of get started, get you moving in the right direction. And I'm hoping that I will hear or see all of you this afternoon at 12 o'clock. Same place, same time, in your jammies will work just fine. Again, my name is Cheryl Brown. I'm an advisor here at the North San Diego SBDC, here to support you with your government contracting needs, and we will be doing everything we can to get you the information you need as quickly as we possibly can. And have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.